Live to Shanghai, the Prime Minister hosting a business roundtable in China's business capital.
What is a very significant gathering indeed. I'm so pleased to be here for what is an important discussion between Australian iron ore miners and Chinese steelmakers. And I appreciate people taking the time to be with us here today and those who have travelled from down under to be with us. Australia and China's iron ore and steel sector partnership has contributed to both countries' economic development for decades. Australian miners are reliable and stable suppliers of iron ore, responsible for almost 60% of China's iron ore imports. And that iron ore goes into Chinese steel production, which accounts for over 50% of global supply. Trade remains a central pillar of our bilateral trading relationship, supporting jobs, investment and prosperity in both of our countries. Steelmaking value chains are also responsible for 7 to 9% of global emissions. Achieving the goal of the Paris Agreement will require the decarbonisation of steel value chains, presenting an opportunity for Australia and China to progress our long-term economic interests. Still, decarbonisation presents a range of challenges. While what we need are enabling policy environments, extensive investments in research to develop new technologies, and collaboration across academia, industry and government. Australia and China each have major stakes in the decarbonisation efforts. As both countries cooperate to advance decarbonisation, we also need to work together to address global excess steel capacity. It is in both countries' interest to ensure a sustainable and market-driven global steel sector. I want to acknowledge the significant underway in Australia and China to develop technologies and policies to achieve these goals, some of which are already showing very promising results. Fortescue is progressing its ambitious green metals projects, including the hydrogen-based green iron pilot at its green energy hub at Christmas Creek in the Pilbara. And Hancock is a core partner in research projects at the Australian Heavy Industry Low Carbon Transition Cooperative Research Centre on developing low carbon processing technologies suitable for Pilbara ores. But just as vital, efforts being progressed by Australian and Chinese partners, such as Rio Tinto's partnership with Shougang to optimise its steelmaking processes, and BHP's initiatives with Ibis and Baowu, including the successful commercial-scale direct reduced iron trial using Pilbara iron ores. While government has an important role to play, we know it will be industry that drives the major developments to decarbonise the sector. The Australian Government is committed to supporting these industry-led efforts, and I look forward to hearing your observations today.
Thank you, Media.
You saw there various senior figures from the Chinese business community, Andrew Forrest there from Fortescue and other senior figures from our mining industry, as well as the Prime Minister kicks off that business roundtable, the second full day of his visit to China in the business capital of China, Shanghai, and then he heads to Beijing tomorrow for those political meetings. But there are more than 200 business leaders from Australia and China alongside those key talks. It's one of the most significant stops on the Prime Minister's trip to China as he seeks to foster deeper economic cooperation between the two nations. Our political correspondent Cam Redden is travelling with Mr Albanese. I spoke to him a short time ago.
Well, just to give you some idea, Kieran, of how important this city of Shanghai is to Australia's trading relationship more broadly with China, if Shanghai alone was a country, it would be inside the top 5 trading partners for Australia, above the likes of India, for example, more than $42 billion of two-way trade last year. So that gives you some idea about the importance of this city and why the Prime Minister wants to put such a focal point on the business relationship during this leg of the visit. A little later today, he will convene more than 200 business leaders from Australia and from China in the same room at the Peace Hotel just up the road from where we are right now. And they want to move beyond this phase of stabilisation. This is really the heart of the purpose for this visit, Kieran, is about not just getting back to where things were before China imposed $20 billion of trade sanctions on Australia and throughout the COVID years. He wants to move beyond that and to grow further in new industries too. There'll be a green steel roundtable this morning where the likes of Twiggy Forrest, Andrew Forrest from Fortescue will be a big part of that meeting, as well as a few other representatives from the likes of BHP and from Rio Tinto, as well as a number of Chinese steel producers and manufacturers, keeping in mind that Australian iron ore trade, a lot of which is used in Chinese steel production, is worth more than $100 billion per year, more or less. So even that one commodity on its own, about a fifth of Australian total trade, one commodity to one market, iron ore to China. So a huge focus on that today. There'll be an emphasis too on emerging technologies. I mentioned green steel. The discussion will naturally evolve towards artificial intelligence as well. There is something of a race, really, an unofficial one, between the United States and China about who can progress artificial technology the furthest, the fastest in this race to boost productivity. It's not just Australia trying to get their productivity up, Kieran. Every country in the world is trying to look at it, and artificial intelligence is key. So we'll see what role that has to play in a part of broader discussions later today. But the real key purpose for convening these leaders today about moving beyond the stabilisation phase and looking to grow that relationship with China across as many sectors as the Prime Minister deems possible.
Now, Cam, the Prime Minister's focus yesterday was on tourism, but a lot of that was overshadowed by comments from a member of the Trump administration when it comes to Australia's position on Taiwan.
What I think we can learn from that, Kieran, is that the White House will be watching this visit closely. We saw even on that first day, Elbridge Colby, the Defence Undersecretary, who is leading the review into AUKUS, revealing on social media, somewhat confirming those reports in the Financial Times, that he has been requesting counterparts in Australia but also Japan to be more clear on what role, if any, they would play in a potential conflict between the US and China should one erupt over Taiwan. The Prime Minister was quite clear yesterday, asked a number of times at this press conference, what would Australia do, trying to get an answer to that question, but he refuses to weigh into the hypotheticals. And a key reason for that is because the United States, for so many years, has held a position of strategic ambiguity. In other words, not signposting or forecasting what a potential response might be. The Prime Minister, likewise, not wanting to buy into hypotheticals, instead focusing on what he believes Australia's role is in the region. And he's spoken recently, including on recent trips to the G7 and others, that he sees Australia's role as one of a middle power securing peace and prosperity in the region, on building trade relations and economic relations, on dialogue being the best deterrent to any misunderstandings or miscommunications. So I asked the Prime Minister about this yesterday, whether he and the United States are on the same page when it comes to their objectives in the Indo-Pacific, and in particular whether he would provide an answer to that question asked by Elbridge Colby of a potential use of AUKUS submarines or a role for Australia more broadly should conflict erupt between the US and China.
Investing in our relationships is about advancing peace and security in our region.
Do you believe that is the same objective for the United States when it comes to looking at the Indo-Pacific?
Well, I speak on behalf of Australia, and I wouldn't presume to speak on behalf of any other nation. That's what sovereignty is about. What I do on behalf of Australia is say we want peace and security.
So, Kieran, we'll be off shortly to that business roundtable. More than 200 leaders from Australia and China convening. It's a week-long trip, a long trip, an important one for the Prime Minister. And in the coming days, those talks around trade, economics and regional security will be had with the leader of China, President Xi Jinping, one of the most powerful and influential leaders in the world.